Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
And what the government's done is they've put the wrong animal in the corner. They haven't learned their lesson that I don't go away.
I've come up with an 11th commandment, which is obey the public health orders. And I would encourage everyone to make sure they do that.
Even just as a regular person, looking at that, wondering, who does this guy think? He's God? Arresting people just for living life is where they're at.
Members of the Public Safety Investigations Unit obtained warrants of arrest for 6 individuals.
It doesn't matter if it's $1 or $1 million. I said, even arresting me won't stop me. You'd have to kill me. They're scared of losing their jobs. And that's all these politicians are worried about, is just getting reelected. We need all the help we can get right now in Manitoba and Canada alike. And you guys are helping me right now with my lockdown tickets, my COVID tickets. And this offer to help me with these legal fees is awesome.
Any law that the Manitoba legislature or any legislature in Canada passes, even the House of Commons, is subject to scrutiny under the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. So if there is a law that violates the Charter, violates constitutional rights, then the validity of that law can be challenged.
Sydney Fizzard, junior videographer for Rebel News, and today we're bringing you the story of Patrick Allard, who is a very outspoken Manitoban when it comes to the restrictions being put in place by Premier Brian Pallister. He is also one of our Fight the Fines clients and has received multiple tickets for breaking the Public Health Act. Now, Fight the Fines is a Rebel News civil liberties project where we connect top criminal lawyers and civil litigators with people who have received lockdown tickets to help them fight those tickets at no cost. To support that, go to fightthefines.com. As well, all donations there now qualify for a charitable tax receipt through the registered Canadian charity, the Democracy Fund. Now, unfortunately, this story doesn't just end with tickets. Recently, Patrick Allard was arrested after a warrant was issued by Manitoba Justice. This was on the grounds for multiple breaches of the Public Health Act. This warrant was one of 6 that were issued on the same day, all for leaders in Manitoba who are against the lockdown measures Mr. Brian Pallister has imposed onto the people of Manitoba. Even though this is a non-arrestable offense, the Premier has decided to grant unwavering authority to anyone willing to enforce his draconian rules, however unconstitutional they may be. Today, we're going to share with you the brave story of Patrick Allard, the man who's going up against local government dictum in order to retain the rights and freedoms that we all hold so dear.
Well, what are we today? We're Saturday. I've kind of lost track of time as I spent the better part of yesterday in police custody. I was arrested on a warrant issued by the Manitoba Justice Department, which forced the hand of the Winnipeg Police Service to arrest me for failure to comply with the public health order, stemming from an incident on May 15th, where we had a peaceful protest outside the Manitoba Legislative Building. And with probably about, I'd say 200 people or so. It was a great sunny day. And then it took the government 2 weeks to drum up this underhanded, in my view, unlawful warrant.
Over a period of months and after the issuance of multiple tickets and repeated attempts to educate, members of the Public Safety Investigations Unit obtained warrants of arrest for 6 individuals.
And finally pulled me over 8 o'clock in the morning yesterday, and I was arrested and detained, and I believe the first person in Manitoba to go through this. And since then, there's been 3 others who have been arrested and since now been released. And there's, from the same event, another outstanding warrant for someone else you're familiar with, Minister Tobias Tissen from the Church of God. So praying that he gets through all this just as well as the other 4 of us did.
Upon your release, you were given a set of conditions. Now, you're here today, which means you signed those conditions. What were they? That's
right. So I received your typical bail release conditions, that I must appear at court when I'm required to do so, and I must reside at my home residence. The different ones out of the norm are I cannot have any contact via email, messaging, calling in person with the other 5 accused, which includes Chris Skye and Minister Tobias, as I mentioned, and a couple other individuals. And then I have another condition that I not plan any more gatherings or invite anyone to any gatherings contrary to the public health orders. So those being the conditions that they were, I felt I could sign those conditions, agree to those conditions, and be of a better use to continue on this freedom movement from the outside, rather than being in a locked cell where I'm close to useless, in my opinion. So we're out here, and it's a small, very small hurdle in the scheme of things. But in what the government's done is they've put the wrong animal in the corner. They haven't learned their lesson that I don't go away. A local news article here, newspaper, probably the largest one in Manitoba, the Winnipeg Free Press, interviewed me and asked me when I had about 5 tickets, they said, and I'm at 11 now, how much are the tickets? And I said, it doesn't matter if it's $1 or $1 million. I said, even arresting me won't stop me. You'd have to kill me. And they printed that, and I stand by that. So they're at step 2. I don't think we're far off from step 3. I think arresting people just for living life is where they're at. What's next? I don't know. So I guess we have to see that, but I'm not stopping, and I'm continuing on. And my message to all Manitobans, all Canadians, and the Manitoba government is, you can't keep me down, and I don't want anybody else to stay down. I want everybody to just keep living their life they see fit, and love your neighbor.
Now, what is this movement you're so determined to fight for?
So this movement is to maintain the freedoms that are granted to us by birthright. You're born with these rights to peaceful assembly, these rights to visit with your family, these rights to worship in the way you see fit, whether you're a Christian or a Muslim or a Sikh or any other religion that you may be. You have that right just by being born in this beautiful country of Canada that is slowly eroding away. However, it's still a beautiful country, and I still love where I am. But we have those rights, and we got to maintain them. We got to maintain that right to religion. We got to maintain that right to be able to walk down the street and hold your head up high. I hold something like that very, very valuable, that I live in Canada, and I want to keep Canada as a wonderful place to raise a family, and for other families from all across the world to come to and raise their families.
What do you think of Premier Pallister and this 11th commandment that he's set out there for his citizens to follow?
I've come up with an 11th commandment, which is obey the public health orders. And I would encourage everyone to make sure they do that.
As a Christian man, and I was raised Roman Catholic, I believe there's only one man or one being or one higher being, I guess, that could create commandments, and that's, God. And he handed down 10 commandments to Moses up on the mountaintop, and only 10. So for Premier Pallister to come thousands of years later and think he's come up with a new commandment, thou shalt obey health orders, I think is very blasphemic as a Christian, but even just as a regular person looking at that, wondering, who does this guy think? He's God? Because even if you're not a religious person, you know where the 10 Commandments come from, and it's not Premier Pallister. And I think the guy needs to lay off pretending to quote the Bible after calling us idiots on multiple occasions. That's not the sign of a great leader. A sign of a great leader isn't crying at press conferences calling us, idiots, like Doug Ford calling his constituents a bunch of yahoos.
It just burns me up. We work so hard, and we have a bunch of yahoos out there thinking it's all right.
I said, these guys aren't leaders. These guys are scared of something. They're scared of losing their jobs. And that's all these politicians are worried about, is just getting reelected. And unfortunately for Brian Pallister and all the other premiers in Canada, they are not getting reelected. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure they don't. And what are we left with, the NDP or the Liberals? I don't think we need them either. I think we need some new parties to stand up, and we need some new Canadians to stand up and run in elections, and let's take our country back.
As I mentioned before, we are helping you with Fight the Fines with a few of the previous tickets you have, and I'd like to extend that offer to you this time to help. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that comes back to what I said about we are all in this together, and I truly appreciate that offer, and we need all the help we can get right now in Manitoba and Canada alike, and you guys are helping me right now with my lockdown tickets, my COVID tickets, and this offer to help me with these legal fees is awesome.
In conclusion for today, do you have any end notes you'd like to leave us on?
I just want to say, I want everybody to keep living their best life. And I've been saying this in the last few of my live videos on Facebook, that I want people to do what they feel is right. And what that means is live your best life.
And to help these clients that we have in Manitoba, including Sharon, including Patrick Allard, including Dr. Jerry Bohemier, including Todd McDougall, we actually have Leighton Gray. He's a top-tier lawyer that we have helping with all the Manitoba Fight the Fine. Can you give us an update on Patrick Allard's case?
He's facing a series of tickets that date from between November of last year to May 15th of this year. So he has more on his plate, legally speaking, than some of these other folks, and for that reason. And but in any case, the interesting feature of his case, as I mentioned earlier, is the extent to which his freedom of expression is being impacted, because his bail restrictions, for example, restrict him from engaging in this type of activity where he promotes these events, and so that is a significant restriction of his freedom of his charter rights. And that's the one that is of main concern in protecting his civil rights, and also for doing a lot of good and putting himself out there for the good of other people whose rights are also being restricted. And thank heaven for people like Mr. Allard, people like James Coates, people like Mr. Pulaski, because without them, being out front and sort of taking a lot of slings and arrows for the cause, as it were, it will be difficult to challenge these laws. But Mr. Allard is very typical, though, in that he's an intelligent man. He has a very specific purpose to what he's doing, and everything that he does is peaceful. Nothing that he's done threatens anyone. It's all, as in describing his slogans there, it's all designed to raise awareness, to get people interested, to inform, and most of all, to get people out and exercise their right, their constitutional right, to peacefully express themselves and to be civil disobedient. That if there is a law and if these laws are indeed unconstitutional, then the persons who are challenging, like Mr. Allard, what they're doing, and very bravely, is they're saying, well, this law, I know this is the law of Manitoba, but I have a very strong sense that it's wrong. And what he's doing is he's expressing his right to do that in a way, as I say, that is peaceful. And that's really what Mr. Allard is all about, as far as I can tell, in terms of my experience with it. And that's the approach that we're going to take in terms of putting forth his defense.
Without revealing too much information, how do you plan on fighting his case?
Well, as I said, the focus is going to be upon alleging charter violations. There's not much question based upon what's been disclosed, and I don't think any of these folks, especially Mr. Allard, would say, he's not disputing, I didn't wear a mask, or he's not disputing that he sent out, he advertised these rallies on social media. That's really not the point. The real issue that he's concerned with is, do these restrictions violate his constitutionally protected charter rights? Because if they do, then notwithstanding the fact that they are law, they're valid law in Manitoba, they, according to the supremacy rule of constitutional interpretation, any law that the Manitoba legislature, or any legislature in Canada passes, even the House of Commons, is subject to scrutiny under the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. So if there is a law that violates the Charter, violates constitutional rights, then that the validity of that law can be challenged in the courts, and that law can be struck down as being unconstitutional. In other words, the Manitoba legislature can pass these restrictions, but if they violate a person's charter rights, then it is possible to have that law struck down as being unconstitutional. So that's the basic approach that we're taking in relation to Mr. Allard and really this group of people who are charged.
Let's just have a conversation. Is that too much to ask of the Premier of Manitoba? It really does seem so if you talk to someone like Patrick or others who are against the tactics being used by the local government bodies. That said, we will be there for Patrick and others who have found themselves face to face with the new medical tyranny brewing here in Canada. And if you wish to support those individuals, please go to fightthefines.com and remember that any donations now qualify for a charitable tax receipt through the registered Canadian charity, the Democracy Fund. We're going to keep following this story to see what transpires. For Rebel News, I'm Sidney Fizzard. Have you been unjustly ticketed by bureaucrats handing out fines for what they say is public health and safety? Well, if that's the case, go to fightthefines.com, tell us your story, and we will help you fight these draconian lockdown tickets with our top-notch civil litigators and criminal lawyers. And if you have not received a ticket but you wish to support someone who has, go to fightthefines.com. Donate and help these people get the coverage they deserve.